Live.
Hi.
Hello, Dr. Bennett.
Thank you for your patience with me as I flowed through my day.
It's
I
a
think
busy,
yeah,
it's a
it's
busy
so
one,
busy.
huh?
Yeah, um, uh, in a good way. Like this, I'm in my flow, so it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm texting you going, I need 15 more minutes. I need 15 more minutes, but I'm not panicked about it because I try as much as possible not to live tied to a time because that interrupts the flow.
Well, and you got to eat. You and I are the same. If we don't eat, everything comes crashing down. So,
Yeah, especially after you deadlifted this morning. Or I deadlifted this morning.
yes,
So,
and I'm sure it was heavy. I've seen the footage.
uh, it's okay
Um,
today.
one thing you and I have never talked about. Segue right into OSU and rowing. We haven't talked about it in a while because you don't talk about yourself. Did you row all 4 years at Ohio State?
No, yeah, speaking of deadlifting, right? My freshman year, I gained the cliche 30 pounds my freshman year. So then I came back my sophomore year and I spent like so much time running and in the gym. I was lifting a ton of weights. And then my junior year, so then like a year transformation of losing 30 pounds and getting shredded. I was walking on campus as a junior, and my coach, Midge McPhail, stopped me. Stranger in the middle of the street, this 30-some-year-old woman. I was like, excuse me, you look really athletic. Do you want to come row for me? And I was like, what's rowing? Sure, I'll do it.
What's that
I'd
mean?
always wanted to be on a team. I tried out for every single sport in high school, including cheerleading. Never made anything. And I walked on as a D1 rower at Ohio State. So it kind of like was like, hell
Wow.
yeah.
So you did that for 2 years then, junior, senior year?
Yeah, I did it for my junior and senior year. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. My closest friends to this day are my ex teammates. Um, I could have wrote it in grad school. I still had obviously 2 years left of eligibility, but I was sort of like, you got when you're done, you got to know you're done. You're done. You kind of gotta,
Yeah.
yeah. But it changed my life. Athletics is such an important piece of my life now, and the lessons it taught me were invaluable. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'll never forget that.
I never
Midge,
knew that story. That's
yeah,
that's hilarious. I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, I've never asked Jess about her rowing career.
yeah. I mean, to indulge you even further, so not only did I walk on to the team, but then, I go to this meeting and Midge is like, okay, she's telling like this room full of girls. So she had recruited all of these girls to come row. And I'm like, how is this going to work? Like, there's only 8 people in a boat and you have 2 boats. She's like,
Yeah.
if you keep coming back, you keep coming back. She's like, most of these people in this room will start and they won't come back.
Huh.
And so she's like, just keep showing up to practice. So I did. And then I ended up, I don't know if you know anything about rowing, but
Just the
so,
rowing machine at the gym. That's about as far as it goes.
oh, yeah, see, it's hard. Um, so in a traditional boat, there's 8 people in a boat and one tiny person steering the boat and yelling at the large people to row harder.
Ah.
So the person in front of the coxswain who's steering is called the stroke, and that person is in charge of keeping the rhythm and timing, and really is the leader of the boat. So I stroked the first novice 8 to the Big Ten championships in
Boom.
2002. Yeah,
Boom. Big year.
yeah. So it was good.
Love it.
Hmm.
Well, thanks for being here today. Uh, Officially here with Dr. Jessica Bennett. And I want to thank you for stopping in. I introduce you as mother, wife, CrossFitter, yogi, podcaster, author, intervention specialist, advocate, door holder, amazing person who I am fortunate enough to call my friend. How are you?
Thank you. That's so sweet.
It's a long list you got going for you.
Yeah, I am giggling to myself like, uh, and woman with ADHD.
Well, and you and I
And
talk
that's
about
like
that a lot. We both do, and it's fun to compare stories of unpacking it as an adult to, I guess, provide awareness around it, which we can get to. Um, so I guess we talked about college a little bit, and I was educated on your rowing career. Just let's kind of dive right in. Did you know coming out of college and that grad school was immediate? And did you know I'm going to get into teaching, educating, intervention specialist right away, or was that a calling later?
it was definitely part of a journey, and I think I see a lot of high schoolers now who are starting to think about their journey of college. I think that a lot of times as a society we think college is that end goal. And so for me, college was totally a journey. I went in guns a blazing, wanting to be probably a million other things. Um, I certainly have my strengths and I definitely have my weaknesses. And I think one thing I wanted to be was actually a physician, a medical doctor. But, my math and science education wasn't quite up to speed there. So I kind of was just like this flowing through, finding my strengths and my passions. Um, I also really wanted to be a writer. So when I first started off in college, I was a psychology and English major. Um, and I've always written since I could write. I remember I have boxes of journals from my teenage years all the way through till from last year. Um, and somebody in my life was like, "Oh, you can't make any money writing. How are you going to support yourself?" And I was like, "Okay." And I always have loved children. Um, my brother and sister, I had come from a big, fat, blended family. So my half brother and half sister are 9 and 11 years younger than me, respectively. So from a very young age, I have been with children and teaching children. So with my brother and sister, to when I'm 15 years old, teaching kids swim lessons. Um, and that passion for literacy has always been there. So at some point in college, I was at a party and was trying to hit on this extremely gorgeous young man. And he was like pointing to his ears, and I'm like, huh? And he was deaf. So I just took it upon myself right then and there to learn sign language so I could talk to him. And I had known like the ABCs from Girl Scouts way back when, and that's how I learned sign language. So, anyways, it's this long, like crazy journey of I've always been interested in literacy. So I was like, at the time, had dropped the English major, knew that I wanted to be a teacher. So I started taking all the prereq classes for a master's in education because I was pretty late in the game when I decided to be a teacher. And then I was like, wait a minute, I've been learning that people learn how to read based on phonics and sounds, and you're deaf. So how in the world did you learn to read? Well, we started a great friendship, and I ended up getting my master's in deaf ed. So yeah, worked in that field for like 6 years, but I still needed to know more because it wasn't cutting what I had learned in my master's program was not cutting it in reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think this sense of education equity, really, it's a social justice issue, has always driven a lot of what I've done. So I went back to school to get my Ph.D. Um, really, so I could learn more and be a better teacher. Yeah, so my PhD is in special ed, specifically in literacy. And then I ended up doing tons of work with kids who have dyslexia, with kids who come from impoverished backgrounds who don't have robust language and literacy coming into school. And yeah, that's how I got there, I guess, just from talking to people and wanting to help them.
One of the things that I've noticed about you is you always search for the bigger why. And I think what's really cool is a lot of people maybe spend their whole life looking for that, and I feel like you find the why, and then you move on to the next one, and then you'll go through that, that surge of life and figuring it all out in the maze, and then I watch you figure that one out, and then you go on to the next one. And so it's really cool and inspiring, as I was listing your uh, who is Dr. Bennett, who is Jess, and I could, I think, named half a dozen others. So it's really cool to watch your journey and see the things that you've been able to accomplish. So how long were you in the teaching platform before you started mindful literacy?
15 years, I would say. Yeah, I'm like at year 20 now, and it's been 5 years, so give or take 15 years. And again, this was part of, I guess, like, yeah, totally part of the journey, and like everything that led up to that was an accumulation along the way of getting my PhD. Actually, I started class 40 weeks pregnant with my first child in my PhD program. So, um, yeah, all these things happened at once. I finished my program pregnant with my second kid. So there was this balance of how do I go out in the world and do what I was born to do, and also be the mom that I've always wanted to be. And so for me, it was this balance and um, trial and error of career and family, and sometimes failing at both before realizing how much choice we have in this country as women.
Let's go back to that because I feel like that's something that we can't just graze over. You said, how do I go out into this world and do the thing I was born to do? How did you know? How
Mhm.
did you know that that's what it was?
So after my PhD, I was fortunate enough to start a job with a nonprofit called Battelle for Kids, and it was my dream job, Michael. It was my dream job, and I was creating curriculum. We had all this funding from various sources, including the state of Ohio, working with the best and brightest educators in the state. If not, I mean, people would move to Ohio to come work for this company. And I was going out all over Ohio training teachers how to teach kids how to read. This is when the third grade reading guarantee was coming out, which, you know, has come and gone and turned into something else. But I was training teachers, and it was just really cool to work outside of a school setting, um, and particularly because I don't necessarily think I belong in a system like a school. Like, I
Mm.
have trouble. How am I supposed to get somewhere at 10:03 every day? Like, that doesn't jive well internally with my system. So at any rate, I was also like, driving to Athens and pumping in my car, and I get a call from daycare, and they're like, "You forgot the nipples for the baby," and like when my husband's like off somewhere else doing his job, I'm like, this is not sustainable, and I'm gonna have to like really make a hard decision here with having my dream job versus like taking care of my baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was like November. Nobody's looking for a teaching job in November, but somebody in Bexley called me, and they were like, "Hey, I met you at this training for the state. We need a teacher. I would be dreaming to think that you would be interested, but call me." And I was like,
Wow.
it literally was the day that my baby had to borrow nipples from another baby. And I was like, I called her. I was like, I'm interested. I can't keep driving all around like this anymore. I need kind of foot in the earth stability. I can walk there. I can walk to work. I can try to do it all
Yeah.
in that position. So went back into the classroom and learned so much. Learned so much, and in the school district that I worked at most recently. And yeah, I learned so much from my kids too. So while I'm sitting there teaching in what's arguably the best school district in the state, now that I've actually seen that with my own eyes, like this is legit the best school district I've ever seen, with the best teachers I've ever seen or worked with kids who have a lot of resources, and they still needed more. They still needed extra support and one-on-one support. And that's kind of where I was like, what about those kids down the street who I did my dissertation with, who don't have enough food, who get picked up by their uncles from school, and they, see all of this violence and experience so much firsthand trauma. Like they are going to need extra help. And that's kind of where I was like, I'm going to start this nonprofit to provide kids with tutoring who can't afford it.
Mm.
And that's really where mindful literacy started from. It was while I was still teaching. It was kind of like, I didn't, I, I don't know what I expected. I just wanted to be able to help kids who were disadvantaged.
Mm-hmm.
And then more and more people were knocking at my door wanting to tutor with me. And then COVID happened. I had a mental breakdown as I was trying to teach intervention at home on my computer with a 1 and 3 year old and a third grader. Yeah, that was probably when I was like, okay, something's got to give. I could do it all, but I don't have to. And I'm going to figure out the bits and pieces where I'm not, where I can be the best teacher I can be, and I can be the best mom I can be, and I'm not feeling like crap all the time, personally.
Yeah. Jess, was that hard for you to come to the crossroads of I'm teaching in this amazing school district, but there's this need, with the nonprofit I started for this vision of helping kids who need it? Was it tough to walk away from the day to day from the school district?
Yeah, uh, there have been 2 times where I really cried leaving a job. The first was Battelle for Kids, when I was like, I have to go, and I don't want to. This is my dream job, cried then. And then I remember, this was we were still online. I think it was still the summer. What pushed me over the edge to walk away, it was very hard. And I remember videoing something for my colleagues to let them know, because it was, again, like we weren't seeing each other. I remember crying during that video. But what really pushed me over the edge was, again, childcare issues with my third kid. And daycare's closing. And I was like, what am I doing? This is nuts. I can do this, right? I can take care of my kid, and I can figure out how to also take care of other people's kids. And find this flow of things. Hey, you know what? My kids are at home and your kids are coming over, and I'm helping your kids get through their COVID education. It all worked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, you've taught me a lot about that in some of the yoga classes we've done, and what true flow state looks like. And if I'm hearing you, that was probably part of the decision process. Is on paper, I'm happy this is the school district that it's a dream, but yet my true flow state and purpose is over here in this other mission that's got question marks, has roadblocks, has unknowns, but yet you just had to kind of persevere to let your, well, back to the why and the purpose override the unknowns. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, my yoga practice is a huge part of all of it, and I don't mean my yoga practice of like going to the yoga studio, getting all hot and sweaty, you know. Like, yes, that's where it started, but at the time of my breakdown, I had started a yoga teacher training course, and really learning about what yoga actually means in terms of Eastern philosophy, and also um, how to regulate my nervous system. And so, really, what it came down to is like my nervous system is requiring so much effort for me to regulate that I can't sustain this. So yeah, the whole thing, like I'll say zoom out and see the whole big picture, and I can articulate this now having already gone through it, but at the time I wasn't there. And so I think of like a dot. Think of a dot, and that's me as an individual. And then there's a circle around that dot. That's my community. It could say like my nuclear family, then another circle, my community, and then another circle of the world. So how do all of these? How am I kind of serving all of those things? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it definitely played a huge part to the decision making process.
Mm-hmm. We can get into your book maybe in a little bit, but you know, I don't want to go too far without talking about mindfulness and the regulated nervous system, because I know you and I've had conversations about it. And the nervous system, the past year to 18 months for me, has been one of those things that once you make this discovery, all of a sudden this information overload, it's everywhere, right? And it probably started a long time ago with you and I having discussions about it and some of the work that you've been doing with kids and how it still affects us as adults. About 2 weeks ago, my kids, we were having dinner and they both told me that I talk about the nervous system too much. So I'll take it, right? And it's so true to, I think, educate our kids on, it's the end all be all, right? It's everything. And we can talk about the trip to Kenya a little bit too, how you noticed the kids systems there, and then the regulated nervous systems. But what is it exactly? Could you kind of break down what a true regulated system nervous system looks like, mindfulness, awareness, and how it impacts anxiety?
Sure. Well, just to iterate, I am a doctor of philosophy and education. So, from my understanding of this, it all comes from my yoga teacher training,
Sure.
and my own personal experience with it. But um, I think of the way that we experience the world as on this pendulum, right? And if you think of those like old kind of tripody things with the silver ball that's hanging down, and you know what I mean? Like it hits the
Yeah.
ball, and then the ball goes like this, and then it hits that ball.
Yeah.
So
Like
like
Cosi,
that's
they
like
have
our
those.
baseline, right? Like we have these swings throughout the day or week or month or season or year, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like this. And sometimes we feel like we're, being pulled this way or being pulled that way or getting slammed too hard and can't, we want to come back to center, but we can't, right? So to me, like, um, this neutral state is where we desire to be. This like really inner peace, like that's to me is inner peace, like where I'm cruising, feeling good, like Pete the cat, kind of like it's all good, you know. Well, invariably things are going to happen, whether that's in our bodies, like we're hungry or tired, or our basic needs aren't being met, or in another concentric like circle, emotionally. Maybe something happened relationally that it really is impacting our emotions, and it's got us all off kilter. Um, and so so regulating our nervous system just means like you can ride the wave and surf the wave of the disturbances, but you know how to get yourself back to neutral, and to be like, okay, this is a normal part of life and feeling, and it's okay for me to cry my face off for 15 minutes face planted on the floor. I'm a human being. Isn't this something? And then like, okay, that's over. Like, okay, I need to get myself back to neutral.
how are
That's how I think of it.
how are some ways that you do that? Is it through yoga, CrossFit, moving the
Mhm.
body, separating the mind and body? What are some ways that you, when you feel out of whack, like how do you get back to neutral?
Yeah, a lot of it is knowing thyself. We're all so different. I do believe that we're all so beautifully unique and have different needs. For me personally, I've always needed a lot of exercise. So even though I somehow managed not to make it on a single athletic team in the 90s, my mom had me doing aerobics at age 5, you know, like with the little LA gear weights. And I was a dancer all growing up. So actually having that mind body connection was really important for me in that outlet. So yeah, exercise is my non-negotiable every day. It's the first thing that gets scheduled, and it never gets cut. And yeah, proper sleep and nutrition. Sleep is so important to me. It's probably gotten more important as I've gotten older and had kids, and our bodies are constantly changing. Um, yeah, and then just for me, knowing when social interactions are going to feed and fuel me, and when they're going to drain me, and just being able to say no, I'm not up for that. I'm not up for that today is really important too.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I feel it's more simple than we make it, right? Those three, like diet, for me, at least for me, diet, exercise, and sleep. Gosh, sleep has been such a wide, you know, eye-opening experience as far as like reading and educating on it. And I've got a sleep tracker now, and I can see if I'm off. Oh, well, there's where it was, right? I didn't get my 7+ hours, or even diet. My protein intake was low, or and so it sounds like it's so easy to, well, of course you should eat right, of course you should get to sleep, of course you should, but when you really start to zoom out to 10,000 feet and look of why am I feeling this way, or it's like how many times do you go to the gym feeling good and you leave feeling good, but when you go feeling like crap, it's like the light switch flips, right? You're driving home and that dopamine hit's still there and you're like, oh, okay, that's what I needed. And it's hard to understand
Yeah,
that, right? It's hard
yeah,
to see it when you're not in it. It's like, I don't want to be here. And then
yeah,
you get through it in the sweat and you're like, okay, that's what I needed.
yeah. I always say I never regret going to the gym. I don't always want to go, but I never regret spending that time there.
Yeah. We
Even
regret.
yesterday, like I, so yeah, I do CrossFit, right? I also power lift now, and I kind of balance it out so I don't just do CrossFit. I'm really conscientious about lifting now. But anyways, some of the CrossFit workouts are really hard and intense, and no one in their right mind would voluntarily say, "Yeah, I'm gonna go do that by myself." Because I
Right.
would see it and I'd be like, "No, thanks." So I intentionally don't look at the workout before I go in. So yesterday I went in and I saw what it was, and I was like, "What? You gotta be kidding me!" And
Yeah.
I actually thought about doing my own thing, and I was like, "No, we're doing this." And I was so happy I did. It was a huge dopamine hit, and I didn't want to do it because I was already feeling crappy. But after I did it, it just felt good, you know.
Yeah.
No regrets.
There never is there? Once you get out of there,
No.
you're like, well, obviously, dummy, I needed that. That's what I told you. It's seems so obvious, but dragging ourselves there and going through it to get to the other side, it's that checking that box, and no two workout
Hmm.
looks the same. And I think just understanding, accepting that if I can get through this, it's going to be a better day than if I had not. And for me personally, I have to do it in the morning, or I used to say it won't happen at all, but I've started sometimes doing, more movement in the evenings, even if it's just a long walk after dinner. But I think the crucial part for me is in the morning to just set the tone for the day.
Yeah.
So, what came first, the podcast or the book, or both at the same time?
Oh, well, okay, so it should be really clear. So I started the nonprofit, had that kind of going on one spinning on my right hand, and then when I left, a lot of my work was done privately. So I was raising money for kids so that we could spend it on tutors for kids. But then I had this LLC business that just it started with me in my basement classroom, and I was like, oh, I hope I get enough clients to contribute to my family income. To, oh my gosh, I have so many people and not enough time in the day, and ended up, hiring people. That's all through my LLC, my
Okay.
business.
And that's mindful literacy?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
mindful
yeah.
literacy.
Okay.
in order to raise awareness for the nonprofits to raise money, I started the podcast, which was me talking to other educators in the field, and it was really fun. So I did that for a couple of years. I think I've got almost 50 episodes. I haven't done it in almost 2 years now. I started to like turn it into the Mindful Miru podcast thing, and then I think that chapter's done. I think the Mindful Literacy podcast chapter is closed for right now.
Okay.
But okay, the book. I can't really watch the news because it's here's a regulation tip. Like it's just not good for me. I'm so sensitive at this point. I like take things really hard.
Yeah.
So you cannot avoid some things, and some things you really do need to know about. But a couple of years ago, well, in 2022, when the Ukraine conflict started, I was like really distraught about it. I just couldn't believe this was happening in our modern day, and I just was thinking about the kid. You know, I kept for some reason kept hearing about kids losing their families and being orphans, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is awful. Like I'd wake up and think about kids hearing what they're hearing in Ukraine trying to sleep, which is probably a bunch of loud bombs and guns, right? So, anyways, I started writing a book one night. I had all of the texts for it done. I do go to bed pretty early, but for some reason I just couldn't sleep that night, so I just decided to be productive with my time and write this book. Yeah, Mindful Miru. So it's basically kind of whispering to a child who needs to regulate their nervous system what things may or may not help. Like try this, try that. And because I'm a literacy teacher, it's written in mostly in rhyme because that's a really important piece of learning how to read. And really just teaching kids self-reflection questions to check in with those basic need things like, do you need to eat? Do you need to take a nap? Do you need some water? Do you need a snack? Like, and it also wanted it to be in rhyme so that kids can memorize the words, so that when they're in a state of distress, it's easy for them to be like, oh, you know what? I probably am hangry. Let me go ask mom for a snack. So yeah, that's how Mindful Miru is born.
Well, it's a beautiful book. And how do you say the illustrator's name? Mary.
Mary's Doodleweets.
Okay,
She's from Poland.
that's what I was gonna say.
I could be saying it wrong. I don't speak Polish. I found her on Fiverr, of all
Oh
places,
wow, very
which
cool.
is a platform like you can hire freelance people. Like, I mean, you name it, artists, writers, editors, graphic designers, website, people. So I knew I had this book, and I knew that the pictures were going to be really important. I knew I wanted it to be a picture book. And I wanted it to have this like classic, beautiful art that would the story would speak for itself. And I somehow found her on Fiverr, and I knew when I saw her sample art that we needed each other.
Yeah.
So the whole process of making that was pretty incredible. She doesn't speak English. I don't speak Polish. So she had this book translated, and the proofs that she started sending me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is like a match made in heaven. And how do you understand me without understanding my language? And like I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but she still tells me like how this book changed her life. Wow. And how doing the art was a really important part of her healing process. Having a child with extreme anxiety, and how it helped her in her mindfulness practices. So yeah, that it's just like such a cool, beautiful story that we got put together.
Wow, that was beautiful. Yeah. The language barrier, and she you felt seen.
Yeah, and more than that, what I told her was like, I don't feel like this is my book. This is our book, and not just Mary's and my book. It's our book, Michael. It's anyone who picks it up and reads it, you're included in the R,
Mm-hmm.
the our OUR. Yeah, because it didn't come from. I don't feel like it came from me. It came from many of my teachers, my yoga teacher in particular, from the healers in our life. Our Gabby, our
Mm-hmm.
chiropractic friend,
Mm-hmm.
Kate, our massage therapist friend, who still does thermal therapy. And more than that, it kind of took those human nuggets that had been swirling inside of my heart and throat. And then also, I feel like it came down from the universe and creator. So it was this kind of meet in the middle of my humanness and just like this earth heavenly body coming down to help put it all together.
Would you say you felt like you were the messenger in this?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go back to what you said earlier, where you had family back in college or before when you said you can't make money as a writer and that's a bad idea. And I think of one of my favorite authors, Stephen Pressfield, who is wildly successful, has, I don't know, 12 to 15 books, something like that. And when he was first starting off, he went through the same. I think it took him 18 or 20 years to get published, something wild like that. But he has the line that in the beginning, he just says, I'm just doing it for the love of the game. And whatever
Mm-hmm.
happens, happens. But I'm doing it for the love of the game. That's what he would tell people. And he had a lot of blue collar jobs. He was a truck driver and he did all these things, but he kept writing. And it was a really cool story to see, kind of like you were saying, where it was just this message that he was giving. And he went on to write The Legend of Beggar Vance. Am I saying that correct? The movie that Will Smith ended up starring in, that was uh, his story. But anyways, he went on to write a bunch of inspirational books, and yeah, it was really cool to kind of see. Kind of reminded me of what you said earlier. And here you are today with this book, right? That's the idea that wouldn't die, that you just kept going with. I'm going to do this for the love of the game. I'm the messenger. I'm going to put this out into the universe and see what happens, and I'll release it.
Yeah, I love that because that's kind of how I feel now, where I feel privileged enough to be in a spot where I can be like, okay, cool, I get to create this, and you know what? Even if it only helped Mary's, what a win! And the hardest part for me has been selling the book. I'm not like a marketer or salesperson, and that's been just god awful. um, because I just don't want to do it. I did the thing. I made the art. I love the art. My kids love it. Mary's loves it. That's good enough for me. Like, but then I've got this, 1,000 books in a warehouse somewhere that need to go out in the world and help people. So I'm like, you guys, my friends, you guys are like, come on, go get it out there. People need this book. And that's been really like just such a blessing because I still have so much self-doubt, even though, a hybrid publisher did pick it up. And I question it all. I still question it, like, oh, like the girl's white with blonde hair and blue eyes. Like it needs to be more diverse. And Mary's, at some point, I mentioned it to her and she's like, Jessica, you wrote this book about Ukrainian children. This
Mm,
is what they look like. This is what a Slavic child looks like. And I'm like, okay, you're right. Just gonna
yeah.
stay the course. um, yeah.
So mindful literacy, that platform's up and running. The podcast, the book is
Podcast is
out.
dead,
Well, the
yeah.
pod
But you can still go listen to it. I actually
at the
still
time.
refer people to
Oh,
it
it's still
because
there.
teachers will still ask me these really good questions. I'm like, you know what? I'll talk to you about this anytime, but first listen to episode, whatever.
Yeah. So that was, I guess, moving into where we are today. Again, going back to the beginning, what I said, Jess always has something new on her plate. She always has a new why, and this is going to change. I can't wait to see where we're at a year from now, watching what you're doing. But currently, I know your passion Tell me about F3. Tell me about how you got involved. How did you discover it? And talk a little bit about your recent trip to Kenya.
Yeah, gladly. One of my former clients' parents was a soccer mom who was like, "Oh, Jess, you're doing this stuff. It's so cool. Do you know who else is really cool and doing really amazing things out in the world? You got to meet him. His name's Ben Levy." So a mutual client, I guess, introduced me to Ben Levy, who's the director of Final Third Foundation. We met like 4 years ago, again during COVID on a Zoom, and we realized that we had a lot of we had the same vision, the same mission, and we had a lot of ways we wanted to serve kids in our community. So I contracted with Final Third a few times. And Ben has always been an amazing friend and advisor and mentor, even though you'd probably be like, what? I look up to him a lot and I've learned so much from him. And one of the things was that I was not meant to be running or nonprofit. It was not in my skill set. I again don't like asking people for money, and it was just this. I'm proud of it. We raised $30,000 over the course of 3 years and put 6 kids through private tutoring, and they're flourishing now. So that's great. That wasn't my vision. Like I wanted this thing to be larger than life, helping hundreds of kids, teaching hundreds of adults how to teach. And but I realized like I couldn't, if I was going to make that come alive, I would have to abandon what I really love doing, which is working with kids and writing. And at this point, it's like writing curriculum. And so I think it's been like a year and a half now. Like before the turn of 2023, Ben and I were catching up, and I'm like, Ben, I think that you should absorb Mindful Literacy Columbus, the nonprofit, because I can't put the structure in place, but I can come and do my work under the auspices of Final Third, and I just want to do my work. I never needed my name on the door. Like I just want to do my work, and I want to do it with you in Final Third because I really believe in the mission, again, of putting sports and mind body connection together. The program I work for under Final Third now. Oh, by the way, Ben didn't believe me, and I had to ask him 3 times before I'm like, no, dude, I'm closing shop. Like we're done. So can I have a job or what? So can I have the it's called the Soccer and Literacy Program. Final Third is in charge of, well, first of all, it started in Mombasa, Kenya in 2011. And it started because Ben didn't know really what direction he wanted to go in after college. He knew he wanted to go get his MBA, but he wasn't quite ready to start. He didn't, all of the pieces weren't crystal clear. So he went on this service learning trip to Mombasa, Kenya on a whim, on the recommendation of a family friend. And he got there and then he just stayed there because he was like coaching soccer and he was so moved by the community. And he'd have to come home, I think, to like satisfy visa requirements, and he'd go back. And at some point, his parents are like, we have to come because we have to see what's got such a hold on you. But he ended up ingraining himself in the community, and starting this community football league with people who live there. And that is still going today. And that is really what started F3. So once he, got his MBA and came home and was looking for work, he's like, I don't want to do the other. I want to do this work. I want to do, and then now Final Third Foundation is what it is because of this whole experience he had, like in a gap year,
Yeah.
So there's 3 different programs. It's a soccer. So we run a lot of rec soccer programs, and we also have club soccer for different members of the community. We have a lot of East African New Americans, a lot of Latino New Americans, and just people from all walks of life, from the most affluent to the most underserved. So the soccer programs, we have wellness programs. So we actually have an environmental director who really takes wonderful care of our facility called Pathways Park. I think there's there's somewhere like around 20 fields out at our facility, and he really makes sure that everything is done in an ethical, sustainable way. Make sure, like we were planting trees last fall, and Max also started a garden. So now we have this wellness program where we're teaching kids how to grow their own food and teaching them about nutrition and what you should eat before you play and after you play. And then the third tenet, so we have soccer, wellness, and then education. So Final Third provides not only coaching education and referee education, but also, and here's where I come in, a soccer and literacy program. So we go into schools, we read with kids for whatever, all the programs are tailored to the particular population, but we'll read. We do structured literacy activities, so that's very much in alignment with our state standards. And then we teach them how to play soccer. And so we do after school programs. Sometimes we're in school during recess, which kids really actually need a lot of structured playtime and being directly taught how to play. So basically, they get a soccer coach and a ref during recess. And we also go in during the day, just to go in during the day to do our programming. So we see kids actually age 3 all the way up through. We have one school, it's a high school that serves kids in 9th and 10th grade who are new to the country. So there, we do a lot of work with new Americans and a lot of work with Columbus City schools.
Okay. And you're going back in January, is that right?
Oh yeah, so Kenya. So I
Sorry,
actually
I fast forwarded to Kenya a little bit there. Sorry.
no, it was part of the story.
Yeah.
So this is kind of cool because I met Ben, and then we worked together. We worked on a few projects, and I was like, "Hey, I have this podcast. Can I interview you?" Yes, of course. So on that podcast, he like offhandedly invited me to Kenya, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll come as soon as you go the next time." So that was probably 2021, and then we just went at the end of 2023. We went in
Mm-hmm.
December, so I got to see where it was all started, which was really life changing in
Yeah.
all of the ways mentioned to you, individually, my community, the world, like everything's. I feel like everything's kind of like coming together,
Yeah.
and that's what makes me so happy.
Yeah. I could, tell how you were just so moved and changed when you got back. And it was so cool to see the pictures and just what real change looks like. And it goes back to when you kind of handed over the reins to Ben with your nonprofit, and I think that's such a just thing is there's zero ego involved when it comes to you. And that's what's so cool to watch of, I don't care if this thing has my name on the door. I don't care. It's more about the why and the purpose of it. So it was really inspiring to hear how you kind of, and you and I talked about it over a coffee a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't know that part. And I left later that day and I was like, that's just so Jess and not surprising. Like you're just so about the mission at hand and the why. And for you, it's about these kids and educating them and goes back to the nervous system and your true purpose. And so, yeah, it's awesome to watch all that unfold and then send that into Kenya and the work you're doing there and going back. And now you're recruiting the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm trying. I cannot wait to go back. I actually got this stack of books for my kids because my kids hear all about Kenya all the time. I still talk to the kids once a week. I actually was just tutoring them before we got on here.
Mm.
And so I've got pictures up of them in the house. And yeah, these books I got for the kids. There was something about being there that it took me months to be able to articulate. I kind of scratched the surface on it a couple of weeks ago when I was recording a video about our trip. But I was talking about the director of the football league there. His name's Kevin. And I was sitting in on this meeting with Kevin and then I don't know, like 24 coaches. Okay. And they're all speaking in Swahili, which I don't speak Swahili yet. I know like a handful of phrases and words.
Yeah, I
And
heard you say.
so, uh, and so I'm like sitting there I cannot understand a single word that they were saying, but I understood every single thing that they meant
Mm,
by just being so fully present and watching them interact with each other, feeling the energy moving around the room. I felt like I was like privileged to watch this ancient wisdom unfold of like how humanity should work through its shit. Um,
mm-hmm.
and I had a really hard time like articulating that. And at the time, I was like, Kevin, you're king. Like, what's the Swahili word for king? You know. So I started calling him Mfama, and which he got a kick out of. But here's what it is. I got these books for my kids, and it's talking about East Africa, and it's like they hypothesize that the start of the very first humans were the start of civilization was in East Africa, and I was like, that's it. That's like I feel like so tapped in, like Avatar tapped into the tree when I'm there.
Right?
That's yeah. So it's probably like a dopamine overload, but also in a very
Sure.
spirit. It's a very spiritual experience for me, and connecting with the kids there. We stay in um, one of the poorest areas in Mombasa, Kenya, which is on the Indian Ocean, and I have never seen or experienced poverty like this. And once you get past that observation, um, the love that is present and the simplicity of living together in community and the connections that were made and felt, it was like I had I understood the meaning of life when I was there. It's like love and creating stuff. I kind of knew that before I left, but like to really like how can you love these kids who are complete strangers? But I do. And like creating stuff. So like even just creating the time of them teaching me how to do African dance, or like I felt like in that moment everything I was as a little girl and a young woman and a mom led up to that very exact moment. Like I danced my whole life. Of course I can pick up. Oh, but I took West African dance in college. Okay, great. Now teach me East African dance. The kids are trying to learn Where is the Love by the Black Eyed Peas. They have these instruments. Well, funnily enough, I've been playing guitar since I was 15, and I had just started picking my guitar back up like 9 months before I left. So I was able to like play guitar and sing with them. And another one of my boys is trying to play trumpet. Well, guess who played trumpet in high school? Let me see that thing. Here's how you can. Let me just sound out "Where Is the Love" by ear and just teach you how to do it. Like that all was just like that was creating something so beautiful. I want everybody I love to experience it. It's just why I'm trying. I'm like, come on, guys, let's go. This is it. This is it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
hmm
Jess, I have two final questions for you. The first one, you can go back 20 years or you can go back to just your most recent experience in Kenya. But the question is, what's one thing you've learned about yourself as you've gone through this experience?
Well, they're not separate answers, Michael. So it is hot as balls in Mombasa, Kenya. It is like okay, it might be like 87 degrees, but 95% humidity all day, every day
Wow.
through the night. Like it's great. It was crazy. And so I one of the phrases that I learned there, the first one, probably one of the first phrases I learned in Swahili was pole pole, which is slowly, slowly.
Mm,
So I've always, 20 years ago, I walked fast, I talked fast, I ate fast, I drank my coffee as fast as I could. But now my birthday is tomorrow. I'm going to be 43.
happy
I think my new
birthday.
word, thanks. My word is pole pole, which is slowly, slowly. And had I slowed down 20 years ago, I don't know that I would have been in any different place, but I certainly would have enjoyed the process a whole lot more. Um, made my fair share of mistakes and missteps, and like when I was first starting this entrepreneurial journey, I would jump at every idea that came at me and like go with it, and I would let myself be influenced by people who were trying to be influencers, but now I'm like, okay, pole, let's let that marinate a little bit. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to do everything all at once.
I love that.
hmm
The last question is, Jess, what advice would you give to someone who's hearing the whisper of a dream or a path in life that seems maybe too crazy to chase?
There's two things that I would suggest that they practice doing. So both involve this. Both involve sit down, shut up, and listen. I think I taught you that meditation. It's a Zen Za meditation, which
Sure.
is a Buddhist practice where you literally sit down, shut up, and listen. And I think this takes a lot of practice, and there's two goals to it. So you have to be really intentional. Is it you turn the knob up on your own voice and turn down the static of everything surrounding you? So other people's voices, other people's opinions, whatever. Like make sure it's your whisper. That's the first thing. And then the second one is know when to turn down your voice and to turn up the voice of the creator
Mm,
in whatever form that takes for you personally.
yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really honored that you asked me to be on here, and so honored that you're my friend and really a brother at this point. So thank you.
Well, I am beyond grateful for you being here and to know you and to develop the friendship we've built the past few years. And everyone calls you Jess, but I get to call you Dada, as you taught me in Swahili means sister.
Yeah.
And so thank you for being here. I will put the link to Mindful Miru in the show notes in hopes that guests check it out. The most beautiful children's book with amazing words of wisdom, and also as we were saying, the illustrations are beautiful. So
Thank you. I also I'd like to invite your listeners who have any inkling to come to Kenya, but maybe are too nervous or scared to do it on their own, to invite them to come with me. So we'll give them the link on how to find us and come with.
absolutely, we'll put all that in there for sure. Spread some
Okay.
awareness around it.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Jess.